The jungle was older than memory and it had teeth. Not metaphorical ones. Real, 6-inch fangs that dripped venom onto blackened roots as creatures twice the size of hover tanks slithered through the canopy or stalked between twisted trunks. On Varnak 9, the top of the food chain wasn't a thing you earned, you survived long enough to be avoided. And even that didn't last forever. Sergeant Calix Vrel of the Intergalactic Peace Front stared at the motionless carnage on his HUD. Another scout team gone. Third one this cycle. The bio readings had spiked for only 6 seconds before vanishing into static. The recon drone sent after them had lasted 4 seconds longer. He grunted, flicking through data feeds as his boots crunched softly over a fungal path. "Another team gone, sir?" came the voice in his comm. He didn't answer right away. "Yes," he finally muttered. "The jungle's still winning." A silence. Then, "Should we call in the Grizzlies?" "No," he said. "They didn't help last time. We sent in the Mechs, the Flommers, the gliders. Hell, we dropped a reinforced tank high from orbit. All gone. This isn't a tech problem anymore." "Then what kind of problem is it?" He paused. "It's a stupid one. Apparently. Because Command's shipping us a human recruit." Another silence, this one stunned. "Say again?" "Some fresh from Earth. Green as moss. Doesn't even have a confirmed kill. Apparently, she scored high on adaptability exams. You know those psychometric things they swear by now. Command sending us a rookie to fix this? That's the word. Human girl. Arrives at dawn." When she stepped off the drop pod, no one cheered. Private Era Monroe was small. Not just in stature, though at 5 feet tall and bare feet she barely reached most Varnakian shoulders, but in presence. She didn't stride. She didn't march. She didn't look like anything dangerous. She looked normal. Soft brown skin, short-cropped hair, eyes too wide and curious to belong to someone ready to enter the belly of a murder world. She wore her uniform too neatly. Her boots didn't have a single stain. And when she saluted Sergeant Vrel, she did it with practiced perfection. That made him hate her even more. "You the human?" he asked, voice gravel over steel. "Yes, sir," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. That annoyed him too. "We don't babysit here," he said. "You'll either adapt or get eaten. Do you understand?" "I read the mission brief, sir." "Reading it doesn't mean living it. Out there the trees are alive. The fog is toxic every 3rd hour. The animals have learned to mimic the cries of wounded soldiers to bait us. There's a thing we haven't even seen that leaves hollowed-out corpses. You understand me?" "Yes, sir." He stared at her. She stared back. Her heartbeat, he noted, hadn't spiked once. "Good," he said finally. "Grab your gear. You're joining Squad Epsilon." "Just me, sir?" "Just you. They need a scout. You've got the smallest profile. Try not to die." Squad Epsilon was in no mood for new blood. Corporal Lenz, a 6-limbed Moralian with mirrored eyes, met her with a snarl. "Another soft body?" he hissed. "This one doesn't even smell like fear." Monroe blinked. "Is that good or bad?" "Means you haven't met the jungle yet. You will." The rest of the squad barely acknowledged her. These were hardened veterans, built like tanks and armed like warships. They had battle scars that could speak in Morse. Monroe looked like a misplaced intern. Their mission was standard: deep jungle recon along the Gash Ridge. Map new predator activity. Identify patterns. Report. It wasn't the kind of mission they expected her to return from. But she did. Not just intact, unscathed. She moved like she wasn't moving at all. Slipped through the undergrowth without making a single sound. And more than once, when a tracker creature stirred in the canopy, she was the one who pointed it out first. "Eyes like a hawk," muttered one soldier. "Or sonar?" "Neither," Monroe replied. "Just listening." Corporal Lenz narrowed his eyes. "You've been trained?" "No," she said simply. "Just paying attention." By day 3 they all noticed it. Something was following her. They couldn't pinpoint it. Just signs. Prints in the muck, too big for any of them. Half-eaten carcasses left near camp. Strange sounds at night. Massive breathing just outside sensor range. And always the prints circled her tent. Only hers. Vrel reviewed the feed. "It's like it's watching her," he muttered. "Should we evacuate?" his second asked. "No. She's not in danger." "How can you tell?" Vrel turned the tablet. "Because she sleeps like a baby. Every night." Then came the Carvex incident. Squad Epsilon stumbled into an ambush. A nest of burrowed Carvexes, pack hunters with acid-tipped spines and speed bursts that defied physics, ripped through the trees like razors. Half the squad went down in seconds. Monroe didn't scream. She didn't run. She stood over the downed corporal lens and held her rifle like a shield. Not like a weapon. A shield. They swarmed her. She fired. Then something else screamed. Not Monroe. Not the Carvexes. Something bigger. Something older. The jungle exploded. What emerged was 20 feet tall, a stitched-together nightmare of scales and spines, with red glowing eyes that didn't blink. They'd cataloged this thing only once. Class X predator, nicknamed the Warden of the Root. It shouldn't have cared about humans. It shouldn't have shown up. But it did. And it ripped the Carvexes apart. Not for food. Not for territory. It killed them and then sat down beside Monroe. She looked at it. It looked at her. Then it dropped something at her feet. A Carvex skull. She didn't flinch. She patted its claw like one would a loyal dog. The creature rumbled. Then vanished into the brush. When they got back, no one believed it. Except the ones who saw it. And those few didn't know what to say. Why? Vrel asked her that night. Why what, sir? Why is it following you? I don't know. You're telling me that apex predator, hell living extinction event, just decided to adopt you? She paused. Maybe. That thing hates us. I didn't shoot it, she said softly. What? The first day. When I felt it watching. I didn't shoot. I didn't run. I just sat. I opened a ration pack. Took a bite. Left the rest. It came later and took it. You fed it? No, sir. I just didn't eat all my food. He stared at her. Then quietly, that's the dumbest damn thing I've ever heard. She just smiled. Command didn't know what to make of it either. The reports were clear. The predator, formerly considered untouchable, had imprinted on a human recruit. Every mission she joined now had a guardian angel in the treetops. Missions that should have been suicide suddenly returned with 0 casualties. Someone in command jokingly labeled it Project Pup. But Monroe wasn't laughing. She'd started to understand something else. The jungle was learning her. Responding to her. And not just the apex predator. Vines moved subtly to avoid her steps. Fog cleared when she passed. Predators went silent as she approached, not in fear but in deference. She was no longer just a recruit. She was becoming something else. Then came the distress call. A research facility, deep in the uncharted sector of the jungle, had gone silent. Final ping showed catastrophic life form breach. No survivors expected. No one volunteered. Except Monroe. Vrel refused at first. You're not expendable anymore. I never was, she said. Let me go. Take a squad. No, she said. If I take others, it might not follow. You mean the warden? She shook her head. No. The jungle. She walked into the wild alone. Past the maps. Past the patrol lines. And behind her, like a shadow that obeyed only her steps, followed the thing that all other monsters feared. The jungle parted for her. Not dramatically. Not like a scene in some high-budget fantasy holofilm. No thunder, no choirs. Just small, quiet things. Branches that didn't snap back. Thorns that curved away from her skin. Ground that seemed to welcome her footsteps instead of resisting them. Behind her, the warden stalked without sound. It moved like fog, huge, deadly fog wrapped in living muscle and reptilian menace. Trees bent in its wake. The wildlife didn't scatter as it approached. They simply froze. Eyes wide. Breaths held. Predators recognized an alpha. But alphas feared what followed her. Monroe didn't speak. She didn't need to. Something deeper than language linked her and the warden now. An understanding carved in moments, not words. She wasn't its master. She wasn't its trainer. She was acknowledged, like an equal, maybe even kin. 12 kilometers past the patrol perimeter, the trees changed. They got taller, denser, less bark, more scale. Some trunks pulsed faintly like slow heartbeats. The jungle was older here. Less a forest and more a sentient entity, tangled around itself like it had forgotten where it ended. The sky was gone. Light filtered through like nervous whispers. The warden paused. Monroe did too. Something was off. The air felt brittle. She crouched beside a tree and pressed her fingers to the root line. Moist, but wrong. No insects, she murmured. No bird song. No scent trails. The warden's growl was a low, seismic roll. Not fear, warning. They were close. The facility emerged like a buried corpse half exhumed, twisted metal and shattered reinforced glass half swallowed by vines. Dull red hazard lights blinked through the leaves. No power. No movement. She stepped closer, weapon raised. The warden stayed at the treeline. Monroe stopped. "Wait here," she whispered. The beast exhaled, low and reluctant, then crouched like a gargoyle and vanished into camouflage. She moved forward alone. The blast doors were fused shut. That wasn't surprising. What was surprising were the claw marks on the inside. She reached out. Cold. Wet. Edged with some kind of acidic corrosion. The air stank of rot and ammonia. Stepping over a twisted bulkhead, she entered the remains of the reception bay. Bodies. Torn. Sure. But not eaten. She frowned. The kills were clean. Instant. Some crushed. Others snapped like twigs. But none consumed. It wasn't predation. It was elimination. As if something had decided, you don't belong. Monroe moved deeper, boots ghosting across shattered tiles and spilled blood. There was no fear in her movement, only awareness. A kind of practiced detachment. Visual logs must be somewhere. She found the command hub, partially collapsed, overgrown with root fingers that had cracked through the ceiling like eager knives. She accessed the last surviving console, rerouted minimal power from her portable cell, and triggered the final holologs. Camera log 445A. Timestamp -1.6 hours before silence. 3 scientists on screen. Nervous. Pale. One's bleeding. "It's changing," said one. "Adapting faster than we predicted." "You modified it," another hissed. "You spliced Varnak's ecosystem DNA into it, on purpose. You wanted it to bond with the jungle's predatory intelligence. That's how we create the ultimate scout system. You created a predator we can't control. It escaped. It's out there. It killed Jenkins. A screech. A blur of movement. Blood. Camera cut. Monroe watched it in silence. She didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Just murmured, "They built a mimic." She searched the files. Found schematics. Logs. Genetic tags. They built a synthetic hybrid. Part neural AI, part biological predator. It could read terrain, mimic patterns, learn behaviors. They spliced it with Varnak predator genomes to let it blend in. But it went too far. It hadn't just blended, it had been accepted. And it decided the humans were the intruders. Monroe backed out of the chamber. Then she heard it. A footstep. Perfectly silent. But her breath hitched. She turned, weapon raised. Nothing. Just shadows. Then her own voice softly echoing from the hallway. "Who's there?" She froze. She hadn't spoken. The mimic had. It stepped into view like a nightmare built by memory. It looked like her. Same height. Same face. Same expression. But wrong. The eyes were too flat. The movements too fluid. It wore her shape like a mask, and behind that skin was something twitching, rippling. Layers of scale and wire. The illusion flickered, as if the thing was confused which version of her to present. Then it grinned. Not a real smile. A mimicry of one. Too wide. Too sharp. Monroe didn't wait. She fired. The mimic moved like time didn't matter. She emptied her rifle's charge into it. Bolts struck the creature, half phased through its shifting hide, others sparking off its armored ribs, but it kept coming. It struck. Fast. Her body crashed through a desk, pain flaring white-hot in her ribs. The mimic leapt after her, its limbs lengthening, reshaping into talons. It was done mimicking. It wanted her dead. Then the wall exploded. The warden was inside. It hit the mimic midair with a roar that cracked steel. The mimic shrieked, suddenly losing its form, half-human features peeling away into a slick, snarling mass of teeth and limbs. They collided with a sound like a planet splitting. Monroe dragged herself to cover, breath shallow as titans clashed. The mimic was fast. The warden was ruthless. It didn't try to overpower. It went for the brain. Its claws struck with purpose, precision, aiming for neural cores, weak joints, flex points. It knew what it was hunting. Because it had learned. From her. And now it was teaching. The mimic screeched one last time, then folded in on itself, body sparking, bleeding, shriveling like rotten fruit under a sun lamp. Dead. Really truly dead. The warden stood over the remains, nostrils flaring. Then it turned to Monroe. She sat up, bruised and bleeding, and reached toward it. The warden lowered its head. Their foreheads touched just briefly. The jungle outside shuddered. And from somewhere deep in the canopy, 100 eyes blinked in silence. Watching. Waiting. Understanding. She didn't return to base for 3 more days. When she did, her wounds were already healing, coated in strange green poultices no one could identify. She didn't speak much. Just dropped the data drive on Vrel's table. "They built a monster," she said quietly. "It got loose. It's dead now. That's it. No, she said. The jungle watched. It knows what we're doing. What we've done. Vrel frowned. You saying it's aware? I'm saying, she paused, eyes distant. It doesn't see us as enemies. Yet. But if we keep breaking the rules here. He nodded. Message received. She turned to leave. Monroe, he called. What are you? She paused in the doorway. I was just a recruit, she said, then vanished into the mist. Monroe didn't walk back to the barracks. She walked through them. Silently. Eyes forward. Wounds healing fast. The jungle's strange bombs still clinging to her skin like living moss. Soldiers stepped aside without knowing why. A few stared, but no one met her eyes. The warden didn't follow this time. It stayed behind the treeline just far enough to avoid sensors, close enough to be seen, if you were foolish enough to look. Only the children from the Agri-Corps colony dared wave at it. One threw it a fruit. It caught it mid-air. It didn't blink. Later that night, under a bruised sky, Monroe sat alone on the edge of the landing platform. Her fingers traced the knife she hadn't used since training. Not out of fear. Out of respect. This jungle had taught her something she couldn't put into words. Not yet. The mimic had been designed to dominate, to infiltrate, to replace. But even with all its weaponry and stolen flesh, it had lacked something real. The warden had sensed it. So had she. That's why it chose to fight beside her. Not as a tool. Not even as a beast obeying some primitive pack code. But as an equal. Thought I'd find you here, said a voice. Monroe didn't look. It was Lieutenant Mira Sans, medic in reconnaissance. I heard you brought back one hell of a story, Sans continued. Command's been dissecting your report for hours. They're pissed. Excited. Confused. Some of them think you bonded with a new bioform. I didn't bond with it, Monroe said flatly. It made a decision. Sans raised an eyebrow. Right. Like choosing a pet. No, Monroe said standing. More like kneeling before a queen. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. The jungle had gone, still. Surveillance drones stopped returning. Automated sentries simply vanished. Data feeds came back blank, or worse, showed repeating loops that ran forever like someone, or something, was watching the watchers. The planet wasn't just observing anymore. It was learning. And so was Monroe. She began walking into the deeper zones during night cycles, alone. Never far. Never long. But she always returned with something in her eyes, like she'd seen a language older than fire, and almost understood it. No one dared stop her. Some said she was unraveling. Others whispered she was becoming. It happened on the 12th day. A transmission was picked up from the ruins. Human distress code. Faint. Warped. On a frequency long abandoned. Command called a full extraction team. Something survived down there, Vrel told her in private. Could be someone trapped. Or something trying to look like someone. You're going with them. Monroe nodded once. No protest. But when she turned to leave, he stopped her. I've read your full log. The unredacted one. She waited. You say the jungle knows we're here. That it's measuring us. Trying to decide. It already decided, Monroe said. Vrel frowned. Then why hasn't it acted? She opened the door. Because I'm still here. The team was 6 strong. 2 scouts, 1 medic, 1 AI-linked drone operator, Vrel and Monroe. Standard armor. Pulse rifles. Light walkers for the rough terrain. The warden met them halfway. Not with teeth, but silence. The team froze when they saw it. Monroe didn't. She walked up and placed her palm on its snout. The gesture was neither command nor comfort. It was ritual. It bowed its head, briefly, and then turned, leading them into the jungle's second skin. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Hours passed in a silence that watched. Leaves shifted like listening ears. Trees seemed to lean in. The light above changed too quickly, as though time bent slightly here, then snapped back like an elastic band. Eventually the warden stopped. They had arrived. The ruins were gone. In their place, a stone circle ancient and cracked. Vines wrapped around the structure like veins pulsing faintly. In its center stood a spire made of bone and steel, spiraled into a twisted symbol that hurt to look at. And then they heard it. Crying. Human. Weak. Female. From below. A hidden door revealed stairs descending into the dark. Monroe led. The tunnel was narrow. Wet. Covered in something like mold, but the growths moved when light hit them, squirming just enough to make skin crawl. No one spoke. Even Vrel was quiet. The crying grew louder. Then stopped. Replaced by words. Help, please, it's dark down here, cold? Monroe halted. The voice repeated. Exactly the same. Tone. Cadence. Wording. The same plea. On loop. Trap, she said. But someone screamed behind her. The medic, Jorel, was gone. Dragged. No sound. No blood. Just gone. Lights flickered. And from ahead the voice changed. It spoke in Monroe's voice now. Do you know what you've brought here? The corridor erupted in motion. Walls pulsed. Something big moved inside the structure itself. The mimic hadn't been the last. It had been a scout. And the jungle hadn't killed it for disobedience. It had punished it for failing. Now the real sentience had awakened. Not a creature. Not a hive. Something more. An intelligence born from death and silence. It spoke again. This time not in mimicry but in truth. Your kind builds predators, it said through the walls. We build judges. Monroe raised her rifle. Then let's see whose judgment stands. 100 shapes burst from the walls. Not quite organic. Not quite machine. Predators like the mimic but twisted further. Less human. More jungle. Roots for muscles. Branches for bones. Eyes like molten sap. The team opened fire. The jungle didn't care. Bullets slowed them but nothing stopped them. Until the warden charged. It ripped through the line, a blur of fury and precision. But this time it didn't fight for survival. It fought with rage. It fought for her. Monroe screamed over the comms, fall back to the surface, now. Only 2 of the original 6 made it up. Monroe. And Vrel barely conscious. The tunnel collapsed behind them. So did the hill. The jungle buried its secrets again. They were airlifted that night. No debrief. No press. Just silence. And the quiet order. Contain. Observe. Do not provoke. But some things can't be caged forever. And some creatures won't kneel again. Back in her bunk, Monroe sat with her gear untouched. She could feel it. The jungle wasn't done. Not with her. Not with any of them. They had called her a recruit once. Then a survivor. Then a symbol. But deep down she knew the truth. She hadn't been chosen by the warden. She had become one. And soon, when the jungle called again, she would answer. The jungle called again. Not with sound. Not with scent. With a silence so complete, it carved its presence into her bones. 2 months had passed since the collapse of the stone hill and the slaughter beneath it. Official reports labeled the mission a failed recon op. The deaths? Unrecoverable. The warden? Missing. The jungle? Hostile anomalous zone. Observed from orbit only. But Monroe felt it. When she closed her eyes, she didn't sleep. She listened. And what she heard now wasn't rage or hunger. It was invitation. Vrel came to her barracks unannounced, wearing civilian clothes and a bruised conscience. They're pulling out of Praxis 9, he said without sitting. All ops. All teams. Full orbital lockdown. Monroe nodded, barely registering the words. They think distance will save them. They think you are the problem. She finally looked at him. I was the test. Not the threat. They're scared of what follows you. So am I. He leaned against the frame of the door. Tell me the truth. Did that jungle infect you? No, Monroe said. It recognized me. He didn't speak after that. Just turned and walked away. The orders came at dawn. Immediate off-world reassignment. No appeal. No explanation. Her belongings had already been packed. But no one escorted her to the shuttle. No one dared. The guards stood back when she passed. The pilots avoided her gaze. Only the children from the colony came to say goodbye, faces pressed to chain-link fences, waving. One girl held up a stuffed replica of the warden someone had made out of local vines and plastic eyes. Monroe smiled. Then she walked into the jungle one final time. And the jungle opened. It wasn't the same as before. Now it parted before her. Leaves shivered in welcome. Trees bent just enough to clear her path. The ground softened under her boots. Light poured through breaks in the canopy that hadn't existed hours ago. And then it came. The warden. No longer hiding. No longer crouching. It stood tall. Taller than it had ever dared in front of her. Antlers spiraled longer now, tipped with violet blossoms that pulsed like breathing lungs. Its eyes weren't beast eyes anymore. They were clear. Focused. Waiting. Monroe stepped forward and placed her palm against its snout again. But this time she knelt. The warden bowed in return. And when she stood, they were equals no more. She was more. The earth shifted. The stone circle returned, but larger. Alive. Vines moved with intent, etching symbols in the dirt no human could read, but she understood them all the same. And in its center, a throne, carved from bark and bone and obsidian. Monroe didn't sit. She stood beside it. And waited. The first creatures came crawling from the underbrush. Insects larger than men. Beasts with mirrored faces. Former predators now tamed by the jungle's code, standing in lines, not as an army but as witnesses. They watched as the jungle crowned her. No words. No ceremony. Just one breath of wind that curled around her skull, leaving a crown of living thorns in its wake. The jungle had chosen. Not a queen. Not a goddess. A warden. The first human one. Orbit broke its silence soon after. A transmission pinged down. Unscheduled energy flare from the surface. Are you reading a volcanic surge? But there were no volcanoes in that region. Only Monroe. Only her. And what rose behind her. Because the jungle was no longer content to stay rooted. It walked. From across the planet, vines erupted. Massive tendrils, each 1 mile long, snaked skyward, interlinking into a lattice of green and black that shimmered like fluid obsidian. The network pulsed and grew, fusing with abandoned satellites, corrupting drones, swallowing wreckage, learning and evolving. The jungle was building a brain. And Monroe was its heart. Colonies watched in awe and dread as the planet bloomed into something between life form and machine. A hybrid consciousness. A planetary guardian. And at its center, a human recruit with a scar on her neck and a predator at her side. The Galactic Council responded fast. Too fast. A fleet of 17 ships was rerouted from the Yulon Crisis Zone to Praxis 9 within 2 days. Armed. Ready. Terrified. Their last encounter with a planet-wide AI had nearly ended in extinction. They would not risk another. Orders were clear. Burn it down. But when the fleet arrived, something went wrong. Not with weapons. With will. The crews refused to fire. No one understood why. They were trained. Conditioned. Sterile from emotion. But when they looked down and saw the jungle's face in the clouds, Monroe's face, they froze. Some cried. Some knelt. One captain turned her ship around and transmitted a single message. We are not at war. We are in the presence of something older than war. Let us leave with our lives. The council called it a failure of nerve. A failure of discipline. But deep down, every race knew what had happened. The jungle had sent a message. You tried to tame this world. You tried to kill what you didn't understand. You sent your best hunters, your cruelest tools, your synthetic mimics. You failed. Because you forgot. Predators don't lead. Only protectors do. And humans? They don't just survive. They teach the wild how to kneel. Monroe never returned to human space. Some said she died. Others believed she ascended. Praxis 9 was marked a no-fly zone. But sometimes colonists near the edge still see shapes in the canopy. A flash of violet antlers. A woman standing beside something enormous. Watching. Waiting. Guiding. They say if you enter with fear you die fast. But if you walk in peace the jungle lets you pass. It even guides you out again. With whispers. Of her. The human warden. Who tamed a planet. And taught its deadliest predator to follow her like a pup. Thank you for reading this tale from the edge of the void. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe to the Void Narratives for more HFY epics every week.